get back into getting you on a plane. Let's get back to flying, all right? Because I want to make sure that you feel good and confident about flying, all right? So we're going to get into 10 tips to help you fly. All right. So let's get into the first tip. Tip number 1 to help you overcome your fear of flying. Try to plan and pack ahead of the night before, folks. Don't wait until last minute because that's only going to make you more nervous and more stressed, okay? So give yourself plenty of time. Tip number 2, instead of packing last minute, use your night before to create a vibe. I always download a new playlist. I'm a Spotify user, not sponsored, but I love downloading a Spotify playlist that embodies the essence of where I'm headed or embodies the experiences that I'm looking forward to enjoying. So I definitely encourage you to do that and just to vibe out and enjoy getting into vacation mode, assuming that you're traveling for fun. And even if you're traveling for work, it is still good to just level set with some good vibes. All right, tip number 3. As soon as you board, try to have a glass of ginger ale. Or if you're not a ginger ale drinker, you can try bringing on some ginger chews or a ginger stick, but I always find that ginger helps with calming my stomach a bit. So if whether I'm feeling nervous or if I'm afraid of motion sickness, ginger tends to help me with that. Of course, you can also take a look at any over-the-counter medications that help with motion sickness and nausea as well. Obviously, consult with your own doctor before consuming anything, but again, you always want to be prepared. And generally speaking, it's good to just travel with a mini medical kit anyway in your carry-on, just to make sure that you are covered in the event of any, last minute needs. Okay, tip number 4, turn on the air vent when you arrive at your seat to get that circulation going, that ventilation going. Just take a few deep breaths in that moment and just ground yourself in where you are. For tip number 5, after those deep breaths, try to remind yourself that even though everything is still fresh right now with these 2 incidents that have happened, try to keep in mind that generally speaking, air travel is considered the safest of transportation modes in comparison to, let's say, cars, for instance, where car accidents happen a lot more frequently. So I say that, and I don't say that lightly because any one accident is too much. However, I do think that there is something to be said for trying to remind yourself to think about it as a rare incident rather than manifesting it to be a negative experience. So I hope that that will also help you as well, because that ties very closely to my number 6, which is, again, for me, I have to ground myself not only in my present state, but in my spirituality. And as a Christian, I do pray. And so I pray when I get on that flight. I pray when that flight is landing. And I just continue to pray that everyone arrives to their destination safely. And again, everyone has different beliefs. All beliefs are respected here. But for me, prayer is essential. Now, the next tip number 7, seat selection. This is always a good thing to keep in mind and something that it took me a little while to figure out for myself. But when it comes to choosing a seat, what I've noticed is that sitting in the middle of the plane is best in terms of trying to balance out any turbulence, because you've got the wings that are supporting the plane at that point. And so if you can choose a seat near the middle if you're concerned about motion sickness. That is what I would recommend. If a seat in the middle is not available, in the middle of the plane, not necessarily the middle row, but if a seat in the middle is not available and you have to skew either to the front of the plane or the back of the plane, I personally lean towards the front of the plane because I find, generally speaking, most flights are bumpy on the takeoff and on the landing. And I notice that when I sit in the front of the plane, it's a bit easier on that bumpiness for me. So again, some of it is trial and error. You might have to figure out what feels best for you. But the back of the plane for me feels like you get more of that whip effect of the wind happening. And trust me, there's lots of wind happening when I take flights because of being in the Windy City. So hopefully that tip helps you as well. All right, my number 8 tip may seem silly, but when you buckle your seatbelt, tighten it up. Something about like tugging that belt and it just feels extra secure, and that helps me. And so hopefully that will help you as well. And number 9, going back to talking about seating, if you are sitting in a window seat, I would recommend pulling that shade down at least during the takeoff and landing so that you're not looking outside while the plane is moving and getting bumpy and all of that. For me, it helps when I can not only not look outside at that time, but if I close my eyes and not worry about trying to read a book at that time or reading my phone, so that my eyes stay at a constant level or are closed, obviously. It just helps. Simple, simple and to the point, it helps me. So you might consider that if you are concerned about any motion sickness. But I would strongly encourage you, if you feel bold enough, that once you are at that, 30,000 foot level, once the flight attendants give you that update, at that point, I would encourage you to open your shade back up and to peek outside because you will feel so accomplished at that point. And it really is just a majestical feeling to know that you are lifted and that you are flying and you get to take in all the sights and the wonders. So if you feel bold enough to do that, I encourage you to do that. And after you do that, my final tip is for you to take a selfie while you're on your flight. I want you to remember that you accomplished getting through this flight, getting through this moment, overcoming your fears, and that it was all worthwhile. And again, I know that flying in and of itself, traveling in general, can be stressful. But those moments when you can just take joy in what you've overcome to get to where you're going, that is a type of power and fuel that can carry you on not only through your trip, but afterwards. And hopefully it will inspire you to continue to keep going, keep wandering, keep traveling, keep playing, because there's so much to life and so much that you can experience by simply hopping on a flight to somewhere new. So the last thing I'll leave you with is to keep in mind that you are limitless when you believe it and when you take the first step. So let me know in the comments if you've used any of these tips before, how they work for you. If you've got other tips from your travels, please drop them in the comments. And I'm sure that as we build this community, others will find great use in hearing your experiences as well. And go check out the airline safety rankings video that I posted. Ironically, it was before this week turned into what it turned into. I do want to call attention to it because that can be another measure that you use as you consider your research on what flights that you'd like to consider or what airlines you'd like to consider. Perhaps that you'll find that useful as well. Thanks so much for watching. I'll catch you on the next one.